Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. And those who are here, maybe very few, but it doesn't matter. We'll proceed with this. Today, I will be talking about the Supreme, Mysterious, and Primordial Emperor. He was also known as Laozi. He was the author of Dao Yin Yang, which I will show you in a moment what that is. That's basically, most people know it as Yin and Yang, or also known as the Dao. Now, to show you what the Dao Yin Yang looks like, I will give you a picture here on one of my monitors. I don't have a monitor as fancy as most of the networks do, but I'm sure you'll be able to see it from mine here, that I'll handheld monitor. This is known as Yin and Yang, also known as Dao Yin Yang, or the Dao. Now I'll speak a little bit about Dao. At first, I would like to speak on behalf of Laozi and his great work. Commend him for all the great work he did, approximately around 4th century BC, before Christ. It's one of the oldest and probably one of the very first and most elaborate picture ever drafted by a person. Now I'll talk a little bit about Laozi specifically for a short brief moment before I go on about his symbol, the Dao Yin Yang, or known as the Dao, or also commonly referred to as Yin and Yang. Again, this is Yin and Yang, the two, the symbol, but together they're known as the Dao. Now, I'll talk a little bit about Laozi. Laozi was the curator to the emperor. Basically, he looked after the emperor's archive, all the written things from the past and all the things that were kept by the monarchy over whatever lifetime of China. So Laozi had access to a lot of information that nobody else had. He pretty well could look through the archive throughout time, and he did. He took the pleasure to basically go through the emperor's archive and do a lot of studying. So Laozi educated himself largely by looking through this archive and, of course, every other document that was available to him. Now, besides highly educated he was, and in those days, the emperor's archive would have been something similar as what we say today, Google. So he had sort of Google at his fingertip, but it was a manual Google, meaning he had to go through all the books. So it was a lengthy time to get his information. So, he spent a lot of time. Not only that, he was a great advisor to the emperor, and while he was with the emperor. Anyway, and that's one of the things I wanted to show, is that Laozi had a tremendous amount of volume of information available to him, and he was the right person to go through the material, and he did. Now, not only he went through the material, but he was also some type of Buddhist in his life or something like that. He had to be a monk or something, because it required a great amount of meditation just in order for him to contemplate all the things that he read. He would have to meditate a huge amount just to debate and argumentative things in order to come clear to whatever he was thinking or studying or trying to puzzle together. But that was one of the things that, two things that he had. One of them was the amount of information was available to him was enormous at that time. Plus, he was also into meditating, so he was a clear-headed person. The other most important thing that Laozi had, he had also this what was known as called morality or ethics, which is also very important to what he did. The reason I'll explain why morality and ethics was so important to Laozi's work is that he was able to determine from right from wrong. And morality is required for that. Otherwise, we simply forget oneself and get lost. Now, those three elements had to be correct with him. He had to, A, have insight, and 2, he had to have meditation, and the other one he had to have is morality or ethics combination of the two in order to accomplish the work he did. Now, eventually I will let the cat out of the bag what the Tao is, because it's better that I tell you right away what it is so it's easier for me to explain. But I'll explain a little bit more first before I will. Now, I have to say that we are very advantaged in comparison to Lao Tzu in his time. More than, roughly estimated, approximately around 3,000 or 2.5, I don't know exactly if you calculate, but it was quite some time ago and before Christ. Anyway, the things that Lao Tzu had to have in order to accomplish what he did. And the 3 pillars is, first of all, that I described. And what I wanted to say is, before I let the cat out of the bag, okay, now I sort of lost myself there, but I'll try to catch up and make sure that it'll be orderly as I go through with all this explanation. But I wanted to speak more about Lao Tzu and to tell you a lot of information about him. He had met a lot of people through his, in that time. One of the people he met was Confucius. Now, he did have a chat with him according to records, and even after Confucius left, Confucius himself could really not explain it any more better than Lao Tzu himself did in that time. So now, of course, the documents that are left today are very, very little. And I will again show you on my screen what these documents look like, so you get basically an idea how people today have to translate most of this information as we are going. Now, you'll see that this picture that I will show here are the known text of Lao Tzu, meaning these are the writings of the Tao, of the Yin and Yang. And this is how today's scholars have to translate from this script here that you see, which is written in Chinese, common Chinese or classical Chinese is known. So now, I mean, scholars have received this information and tried to translate that. Now, of course, I'm unable to. Now, if you would have asked me years ago to give you an idea what yin and yang would have meant, I would have given you also my own perception and the things that I've learned from scholars from all kinds, like, for example, Confucius and all the other people that you can read, or from Lao Tzu themselves, or even from Tao Te Ching or the I Ching, which I have also had the privilege to go through. So I've had some Chinese texts that I have been able to look through, and I find that it is very complex and might not even be translatable in most cases. So I feel for the scholars. Now, to give you an idea, the amount of time that this particular script has been translated is over 250 times in Western language. That's not including the Chinese. So you can see how many people had their fingers in it. Now, to explain, in order to explain something that you don't understand is very difficult to explain. So in order to explain it, you have to actually understand it. So these people were disadvantaged. They didn't really understand what the Tao meant. And the other thing I wanted to earlier say that now arose up again in my mind, to explain the advantage that we have today that Lao Tzu did not have yesterday. Now, as we progressed in time, of course, we have evolved. And one of the most important things that we have evolved is that I have by far more information available to me than Lao Tzu had at any given time. And not only that, my information are much more rapid and more quicker available than it was to him. And furthermore, there's another thing that I have additional benefit to that Lao Tzu did not have. And one of them, the benefits that I had, is that my audience itself is... excuse me, guys. My audience is by far more also advanced, and they also have evolved and are by far more educated. So now, because I have more information and you have more information, so it's easier for me to explain than he could. So in those days, Lao Tzu lacked serious amount of abilities to explain it, because he didn't have all the necessary language or the methods of saying things as we have today, and nor was his audience as advanced and educated and simple. I'll give you an idea. For example, Galileo Galilei, he was the first one to say, or not the first maybe, but the first in record that we have, is that the world is round. Now, when he first time came up and said this, that the world was round, of course, he wasn't very well liked by the churches, and many other scholars, of course, because they disagreed with him. They still considered at that time the world was flat. Now, even though it's been over 500 or 600 roughly, I don't know, but you can calculate that yourself, but it's at least 500 years plus, maybe not 600 yet, years that since Galileo Galilei said that the world was round. Now, if you look at it, when the time when he said that, the church jailed him for that type of utterance, because it was a crime or was not permitted in those days. Now, when Galileo said the world was round, in time, of course, people did accept it. Like, for example, Christopher Columbus was one of them that came along, of course, proved him sort of right that the world was round. But even though after 500 years and so, there are many people today still believe the world is flat, even if you can convince them. So now, I might not be able to convince anybody today. That's fine. Galileo Galilei wasn't able to convince anybody, neither, in the beginning. But that's okay in time. Everyone will see what I'm saying. But somewhere it has to begin, and it's starting with me. Now, I will make a more better definition of what the Tao is, and I'll let the cat out of the bag in a minute. Now, again, I have greater advantage. You have greater advantage. So between us, we can elevate, or we can evolve, or we have evolved in time. So now, to give you a better, clearer understanding, so we can go easier forward, to give you an idea about Yin and Yang, I will not make every little description of it, because it is quite extensive, the text. But the most important part is that you understand a little bit why we are so greatly interested in the Tao. Okay, now to give you more what the Tao should look like, I have some more pictures here that I would like to show. And one of them is that this is one of the, also a great picture, that is an old one from the archive. You will see the I Ching written around the corner. This is called a hexagon, and there are 64 type of hexagon in the I Ching. This is just some of the formulation, how they put it together. How they put it together was correct. I don't know the exact language, whether the language is correct, because I'm unable to read this, but although I have done research and can get the understanding, but it's all in parables, so it's not precise wording or anything. It's sort of out of you, sort of, you have to make context yourself, in sense. This is how this language is spoken. Now, because it's a bit of a difficult language, but I can tell whether it's right or wrong, because I know what this is. But this is the most correct one that I could find in the archive. And now, the most important part is, of course, the Tao, not the writing around the outside. But the writing around the outside is also important, because you can see it is very similar to another person that I will speak next week about. And I will mention who that will be later on the show. Now, to tell you a little bit more what the Tao is, so you have a bit of an idea what it means. Okay, now the Tao here that you see that Lao Tzu wrote is what we know in science today is the electromagnetic field. In simple words, Lao Tzu was one of the very first people on earth who managed to not only fairly geometrically, matter of fact, this is geometrically correct the way he wrote in 2D. So this is basically a 2D information available right now. But I also have a 3D available that you can find on YouTube. And all you have to do is look up my name, or you can find it under the heading Epsilon Alpha and Epsilon Beta. I'll give you a short little demonstration of a 2D. This is a 2D Dao and a demonstration of a 3D Dao. If you give me a moment, I'll put it up in my archive to make sure it's the right one, and I will play you a video. Hopefully that this be visual to you. I'm not certain about it, but I will try my very best to make sure that you can see it. If not, you can Google it. This is a 3D Dao. Now, Lao Tzu could only draw a 2D Dao because of it's on the picture. But if you want to see this video, you'll be able to find it on YouTube. And just all you have to do is look up my name. My name is Freddie Jacklin, or you can look for it in the name of Epsilon Alpha and Epsilon Beta. This one particular one that I'm showing is called Epsilon Alpha. Now, I will show you another one. This is specifically two different kind of Daos. Now, these are 3D Daos that I have been able to show you here, and I will show you another one if you give me a moment. I'll show you the 3D Dao of oops, there. Sorry about that. I don't have a studio like the most professionals do. So you'll have to just put up with me for a second, but I will see if I can get this on the screen so you can see what I'm doing. It's not cooperating with me. Okay, just give me a second and I will do it here so that it'll cooperate with me. Oh, I see. There's a reason why it's not cooperating with me. Okay, this is also a 3D Dao, but this is a different type. This is not the one that Lao Tzu wrote, but it can be used as this one too. Now, show you a little bit more of what Lao Tzu did. Is here. I will show you this work here. This is the work of Lao Tzu, basically. And this is another Dao. This is another Dao. And hang on, yes, I have four Daos. This is one, this is the Gamma, Delta, and this is Alpha. Basically, I named Lao Tzu's Dao Alpha. And the reason why I did that, because it's an AC, a electromagnetic field, the one specifically he drew. Or should I say, maybe not specifically, but we will refer to that. Because that one can be used for all of them, and they will match. Now, I will show you another one that I wasn't able to show you there a moment ago. The different types of Dao that are available. And this is another Dao, and this Dao is Beta. So Lao Tzu did not have all four Daos that I currently have, but I will elaborate. I have one more Dao that I would like to show you that is more elaborate than the one that Lao Tzu did. Now, if Lao Tzu did this one, you would have not probably understood this Dao. This is a very complex Dao. This is also a Dao. So now Lao Tzu only drew one kind of Dao, and that's because that's all he needed. He was the primordial emperor. He did not really need to show any more. But for anyone to explain what Lao Tzu did would have to show what I am doing a little bit more. Not only that, what we see, these are two helixes. These two helixes are exactly 180 degrees apart from one another. Basically, what this is, half double helix, an electromagnetic field. And these two belong together. They're not separate of one another. Now, it has a lot of time had been referred that yin and yang is referred to either bad or good. But in actuality, that's not the truth. Yin and yang can be either good alone, because it would require yin and yang just for good alone. Or it can be just for a bad alone, it would require yin and yang. Or it can be good and bad mix, which would then be, of course, yin and yang as well. So yin and yang does not really refer to as good or bad, or neither plus or negative. And there's a reason for it. because Lao Tzu showed just a 2D diagram. When you look at it, a 3D diagram, you'll find out that yin and yang have two. They each have a positive and a negative in them. So it's not that one is negative and one is positive, because for the fact they both have a negative and a positive. So that basic story will not really fit, that one is negative and one is positive. And the other story that will not fit is that yin and yang is bad and good, or right and wrong. No, they're not. And yet, yes, they can. Why? Because yin and yang are only one for whatever it may be, whether it's for only good or only bad, or for good and bad together. That's both. Any one of the three requires yin and yang. And same, yin and yang one is not negative and one is not positive. They both have a negative and a positive within them, and they simply are constructed together. And it's known together they make an equilibrium. It's a very clever equilibrium system that the yin and yang is designed, because it's a double helix. When you take a look at a double helix in 3D, if you could take a look at it in 3D, what it does is that it creates a grid-like system across one another. So simply one side creates one grid and the other side creates another grid, and when you put them together they create a grid, so that on one side it creates one grid, on the other side it creates another grid. So basically the two dots that Lao Tzu had in his eye, basically what he was referring is that the grid from the other side is within this side, and the grid of this side is within the other side. Together that is simple. Now you can align to either side of the grid, because the grid, each yin and yang are actually a plane, meaning they're each a side. And because they're a plane on the helix, you can either go on this side of the plane or on the other side of the plane. And that's what that is. And because the plane cross one another, that crossing can be used as a grid to one another. Now on one side of the grid, which would be called in science is down the hypotenuse, and the other side, it would be in between the hypotenuse. In simple words, depending on which side it is aligned, it can be down the hypotenuse or in between the hypotenuse. So for example, if one side is aligned to yin, then the plane of yin would go down the yin hypotenuse and up yang in between yang's hypotenuse. So depending which side, so if the other one would do it in reverse, the same thing. So they can use each other grid to maneuver, either left or right, or up and down, or in and out. And that's the purpose of it. Simply, the electromagnetic field is a dual force. It's not a single force. And that dual force works on both sides. So they each use one another for this dual force. One to push, one to pull. On each, their own side, they pull. On the opposite side, they push. This is how the pull and push occurs. And this is the construction of it. It is not that yin is negative. It's not that yang is positive. It's that they both are positive and negative. They both have half of one another, in one another. Now, to give you a little bit more about the electromagnetic field. Now, I've had lots of pictures here. I suppose I could offer you, let me see, what other ones that I can show you that is important. Now, what I wanted to also mention is because Lao Tzu's yin and yang is specifically unique, because he was the primordial emperor, and you will see that in his Dao. He drew the Dao in such specific way that you can actually look at it in multiple form. You can either look at it looking from the pole down, or pole up. Or you can look at it from the east towards the west, or from the west towards east. Either way, the Dao would look like exactly as Lao Tzu drew. Very clever. Now, the ones I drew are specific. Why? because they're detailed information within them the way I drew it. Now, I showed you 5 of them, and each 5 of them are precisely in detailed drawing so that they actually contain information. And same thing as Lao Tzu. Depending how we look at the pole or how we look at the Tao, I can tell you exactly what all the meanings inside of that is. If we are looking from the north, or we are looking from the south, or we are looking from the east, or we are looking from the west. Either way, the Tao can be looked at from any direction. And then whichever direction we are looking at, we can then explain what all those lines mean. Now, the lines are very important. Yin and Yang itself is not really the most important thing. One of the more important thing is the circle that Yin and Yang is drawn in, and the line in between Yin and Yang is very important. The 2 dots is simply just a reminder reference. They are not really there like Lao Tzu drew it. Now, in real life, because Lao Tzu drew that in dots, you do not actually see that neither in real life, but yet it's there. Interestingly, you cannot see it, but yet it's there. And that's what Lao Tzu drew those 2 dots, to keep in reminding the person that it's there. So those 2 dots are simply a reminder to show you that the lines of the other side are precisely within the opposing side. That's what the dots refer to. So I hope I was able to elaborate a little bit. It might not be adequately, but I will give more examples as I go in the future, and a little bit more extensive, and maybe even somewhat more orderly, so that it's maybe better understood. Now, if all of you out there could give me some type of feedback to see what you missed, or I missed, or how I could explain it better, or what you would like to know that I did not say it, because it's so much I cannot really say it all. I can only say the items or the things that I think that are most important, to at least to start, and then as we go, I will offer a little bit more detail in depth, much more than I did. This was basically surfacey, so you can get an idea what Yin and Yang is. Now, in the archive, a lot of people have come along. They all say they have the answer, or they have been able to answer what Yin and Yang is. I say no one has been able to as of this day. Now, I'm pleased to be one of the very first to say I'm able to tell you what Yin and Yang really is, and give you precise, detailed information to it in such detail that it would take someone else a lifetime to proceed the information I'm able to offer. So because it's so much, I will only offer a few, and as much as I can to give you as much information as possible. But the main information really is what you need to know what Yin and Yang is. Yin and Yang is an electromagnetic field. It's a 2D precise. It's a 2D image of the electromagnetic field. Now, normally, the precise 2D image would not contain the 2 dots that Lao Tzu put in, but it is very good that he put those 2 dots in, because that tells me something. He's telling me something, or telling us something. He's telling the world something about those 2 dots. And what he's saying about those 2 dots are that he is quite aware. Wow. Okay. Now, and not only is he quite aware, he put it there to remind that they are there, even though you cannot see them. Okay? Now, those 2 dots are simply just references, so one can ignore it. And the 2 dots, if the person knows that they are always there. Now, that was very clever of Lao Tzu to do. He put those 2 dots in there. One of them reason is to remind you, and the other one is to let us all know that he was very well aware that they are there, and that did not evade him. And so, concluding with that he was able to put those 2 dots and precisely draw the diagram the way he did, and to elude us over millennium, and he definitely was the primordial emperor. if anybody ever was. Congratulations, Lao Tzu. Thank you, everyone. And if you have, like I say, if you have any suggestion or questions or things that you would like to know, please don't hesitate to write in a comment section at any given time, even if you were not able to see this show today. But next week we'll be airing on the Dharma Chakra Wheel, which is from Siddhartha Gautama. It's also very important. So we'll go on to the Dharma Chakra of Siddhartha Gautama for the next week's event. Today it was about the Supreme, Mysterious, and the Primordial Emperor, Lao Tzu, about the Tao, the Yin and Yang. Now, I could tell you a lot more about it, and I will air a little bit more and hopefully a lot more orderly next time around. But this is a good start that you at least next time know that if you had a chance to watch this video, this live airing, then you'll be able to understand a little bit more clear, and I'll be able to advance my information a little bit, so it makes a little bit sense. To give you a lot of detailed information without knowing just some of the basic, or at least what we're trying to say, that would be quite complex and might not even be understandable. And not only that, it could be quite boring. Hopefully you had a good time, and I hope to see you next week, and we will be talking about Siddhartha Gautama and the Dharma Chakra Wheel. I hope to see you then, and invite all the friends that you can find. And like I say, you can ask questions in advance so that I know what I'll be able to answer. And right now, nobody really asked any question in this particular time, which is okay. Oh, that looks like we have one audience, huh? Okay, everyone, I will time out, and thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time, next Sunday, same time, and we will be talking about Siddhartha Gautama and the Dharma Chakra Wheel. Thank you, everyone.